From the New York City area, welcome to the Badass Counseling Show, where the master badass himself, Sven Erlandson, takes you deep and gives balm for the soul, baby.
Hello, fine people. My name is Sven Erlandson. I am the host of the Badass Counseling Show. You found us, for better or for worse. Whether you are checking in from Trempealeau, Wisconsin, or Florida, or all the way in from New Zealand, or if you're up in Massachusetts, it's great to have you here with us at the Badass Counseling Show. I am joined in studio by KC over in the booth as per usual, and Rob the Rocket sitting next to me. Hello, fine man.
Good day, Sven. How are you? Good evening. Everything all right?
Everything is just loverly. Yeah. And yourself?
Couldn't agree more. I got into the studio early, very early. I turned on all the equipment to make sure everything worked. Mm-hmm. Everything worked. I used to work a morning show years ago in radio, and I lived just down the street in a little apartment, and I had to be on at 6 to sign the place on. And I'd get up at like 5:45 and say, oh, shit. And then I would run down the street, and I'd turn the switches on quickly. I'd have to sing the national anthem, da, 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 because I couldn't warm up the machines fast enough. And then somehow I got it on the air. But this was better. I had a whole half hour.
Wow, that's something. That reminds me of being a kid and, being a preacher's kid, all 6 of us kids. And, when we were in a small town at my earliest years, we lived, probably 5 miles from country church. And so we had to be ready and, but, and Mom, how the hell she got us all out the door in time for early church. But then when we moved to the suburbs, Dad was a suburb pastor, and we lived in the parsonage across the street. You'd see the Erlandson kids coming in at the last minute, all with wet hair because they gotten out of showers, except the ones that had to be there early because they were the acolytes and so forth, which was usually me. And so I had to get in and out of that shower. But the preacher's kids are always straggling in, right? Bunch of ragamuffins.
But clean.
Thank God, because we were stinky little rugrats. So we've got some questions going here already queued up. I've got a lot of folks in here. And the very first one comes from Mary Lynch over on Facebook. Mary asks, Sven, do narcissists ever change? Yes. Narcissists change, and I'm going to answer that question in 2 parts. Narcissists change all the time. They're constantly changing. They literally change every single day. And you're like, what the fuck does that mean? They're constantly changing because I guarantee you, if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, I guarantee there are people in their life they are not treating the way they treat you. Maybe they change for their boss. Maybe they change, they own the business. It's like, oh no, they treat their employees the same, but I guarantee they're not treating their customers the way they treat you because they wouldn't have any fucking customers. If they were an extreme taker, an extreme dick, they would lose their customers. So they're constantly changing, and yet we get in on our head that this person, this narcissist, can't change. The simple question you have to ask yourself, if you are in a relationship with a narcissist, or what I call an extreme taker, is do they treat others, anyone, even one person, differently from how they treat you? And if the answer is yes, which I guarantee it is yes, because they don't treat their doctor the way they treat you. They don't treat their customers. They don't treat little old Mrs. Olson down the street the way they treat you. So that means they are capable of turning it on and turning it off. Boom. That means they are choosing to treat you this way. It's not involuntary. It is literally voluntary. It is a choice. You don't matter enough for them to change. There's no pain point. They don't fear losing you. They don't need to change because they don't fear anything. So yeah, do they change all the time? But you're asking, the second answer to that question is, do they change? In other words, will they change for me? Basically. Is there hope for this relationship? Is there hope they will change so that I can finally be happy in this relationship? Yes. Do you want to know, though, what causes narcissists to change? And you sort of got the indicator from my earlier answer. You know what causes narcissists or extreme takers to change? Pain. As you know, if you've read my book, and I know many of you have, my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup, change will not occur until the pain gets bad enough. And a narcissist won't change because they don't have to. There's no pain point. They get everything they want, and they can still be a fucking dickhead. They don't have to change. Why would they? So it's not until they experience loss, and loss that it's usually loss of a person. It's not always, could be loss of a business, something. some sort of loss that they can't contain. They lose something and it causes them to hurt. Now, unfortunately, this is really bad news. You may not be the loss that hurts enough for them to change. They may be okay letting go of you, and that hurts. Because it's basically, I don't matter enough to you, which in all likelihood is confirmation of the message you've been getting your whole fucking life, that you don't matter enough. And now this person is confirming it by not changing for you. But in the end, the question is, do you have the courage to stand up for yourself every single time you're being mistreated? And if you don't, or if you don't want to put in that much work, then the question is, at what point do you let go and move on with your life? They can change. They're just choosing to not change for you. Next question.
Got a good softball for you here.
Oh, I like those. Put it right over the plate, Daddy.
There it is. This is from Sherry. Is it normal to need to journal about things more than once?
Absolutely. Sherry, absolutely necessary to journal things more than once. Because what you're fundamentally doing is you are you're welcoming up all of those feelings. That's what journaling is. And if you're just journaling about what color the trees are today, that's okay too. Or if you're journaling about, gosh, here's what happened, and then my boss said this, and then my coworker said that, and then I got a flat tire. But if you're not journaling the feelings along with it, you're only doing part of the work. The real goal is to bring up those feelings as well as, what I felt, why I felt that, and what that sort of says about me, or how does that influence my thoughts about myself. But really diving into those feelings. And the truth is, some things are bigger than other things. So a good buddy of mine was telling me recently that his sister has to go in for a quadruple bypass. And he loves his sister, loves her immensely. And my buddy is really scared because his sister is fucking young. She's 61. Wow. And he's scared. No, there's no 1 hour of journaling that's going to get out all of his fear and anxieties and trepidation and love and all of that. No. You have to keep going back to it and just keep welcoming the feelings. Welcome them up, give them a safe space in your journaling and flush it all out. Then set it aside when you're done for today. Maybe you have a sense of relief, or maybe it's just, I got to get to work, or whatever it is, or my break is done, I got to get back to work, or whatever. And then come back to it and just keep going until the feeling is gone. That's all. And it sucks to have to go back and do stuff over and over again, but that's the nature of feelings. Some are just bigger than others, and that's okay. Next question. I've read all about codependency. Can parents really co-parent? Okay. I'll just take your question as it lies. Can parents really co-parent? Yes, happens all the time. I'm not saying every set of parents co-parents. I'm not even saying they do it successfully. But in the end, you are co-parenting with the person. Whether it's a good co-parenting or not, that is co-parenting. But what you're really asking then is it possible to do so effectively without all the animus against each other, but more importantly, without it bleeding out onto the kids? Yes. My girlfriend and her ex, they were angry at each other for about a year. This was, probably close to 18 years ago when they divorced. They have a child together, really two, because one was a stepchild. And they had some animus, some anger towards each other and hurt feelings. But then they co-parented. They didn't tear each other down. And they'd have their bickerings and they'd have their stuff, but they did their best to not let it bleed out onto the kids. And to this day, they get along great. And so is it possible? Yes, just keep your own shit out of it, which is why journaling is so important, which is why it's so important to be talking to your therapist or your best friend or whatever it is, flushing it out, your own feelings, so that they're not coming out towards this person. And that takes two to tango. You have every right to stand up for yourself. If your spouse, ex-spouse is hurting you or harming the kids or what, you have every right to stand up. You have a responsibility to stand up for yourself and, of course, stand up for your kids. But if the two of you can keep your own feelings of anger and hurt out of the equation, and just commit to doing what's in the best interest of the kids, you can absolutely co-parent successfully. I see it a lot. This is not some fucking unicorn here. All right, next question. When journaling, do you keep each journal or toss them when you start a new one? Well, if you're asking about me, I used to keep them all the time. I started journaling when I was 13. My mom got me started. I don't know why. Best fucking thing anybody ever did for me. Apart from later, somebody teaching me typing, who knew I'd become a writer one day, and that would be a good tool. So I kept them and I kept them and I kept them. I used to have, literally, no exaggeration, stacks and stacks and stacks of spiral notebooks or 3-ring notebooks. I had all sorts of shit and individual paper and napkins, cocktail napkins that I'd write on. You guys heard me say it before. Once I had a journal and I was at somebody's house or something, and I pulled out a fucking maxi pad out from under the sink, clean one, new one. And I just had to get this thought out of me, and I was fucking journaling on a maxi pad or a mini pad or whatever the fuck it was. And I saved them all. And then I think in my early 20s, I burned them all. Just had a fire and burned them all because I wasn't going back. It didn't, for me personally, it didn't serve a function. Then I gained a whole bunch more stacks. And then about 10 years later, I burned them all. Now I don't keep my journaling. You can if you want. Some people love to keep it. Some people love to go back and read it. That's okay. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just what feels right to you. You want to keep it? Fucking keep it. You want to go back and read it? Fucking go back and read it. If you don't want to, don't. In my journaling now, like today, I was at the gym this morning. I was up at 4:30, and I was at the gym working out, and I journaled between my sets. Why? Because I can unleash some serious rage or any toxic anything inside of me, and then I have a physical avenue through lifting seriously heavy weight, and I get the emotional release. So I walk out of there, and I'm like, I'm as free as a bird now, and this bird you cannot cage. Yes, utterly out of tune, but nobody gave me a note, so fuck off. So yes, you want to keep them, keep them. If you don't want to keep them, don't keep them. All right, next question. Should you expose the extreme taker or let them destroy more lives? If they're hurting people, yeah, I think you sort of have an obligation. If you can, without it hurting yourself, because you also have an obligation to protect yourself. You have every right to protect yourself if you have been in the sort of sights of the extreme taker. But yeah, if they're hurting other people, yeah, if you want to, I would encourage you to. But are you under any sort of obligation to continue to engage, even if it's in the exposing of an extreme taker? Are you under an obligation? No, you're not. Because when you're dealing with an extreme taker, or what is known in common parlance as a narcissist, extreme taker is my term, when you're dealing with that person, there is always the chance that they may hurt you. And if you've been hurt by this one and you're considering exposing them, you got to ask yourself, do you really want to deal with all the collateral damage, all the backlash? And you have every right to say, no, I don't want to. I just want to get the fuck out. I want to protect myself. And that's okay. The other thing you have to ask yourself is, because you said, or should I let them destroy more lives? The question you have to ask yourself is, are you doing it out of malice? Are you doing it out of spite? Because fuck them and I want to get back at them. If you're doing it for that reason, that's your choice. You can do that. But then you got to ask yourself the question, and there's no right or wrong answer. You got to ask yourself the question, do I really want to spend my life indulging my anger? In other words, this person fundamentally has power over me because they're keeping me in a state of anger. In 2007, I gave up the animus that I had towards my ex. And I imagine this, 2 army enemies encamped on opposite sides of a river. And we'd been fighting for, at that point, 11, 12 years. I mean, since the separation and divorce, but longer before that. And I finally got sick of it. I got sick of the cloud that our negativity had over our children. Even if we weren't actively saying something, there was a toxic energy. But I also got sick of the negativity inside of myself. And so I told my army on our side of the camp to load up all of our semi-trucks, all of our tractor trailers, and with all of our weapons, all of our ammunition, we drove it across the river, and we parked it, left the engines running, and we all walked back. Now, to some degree, we got blown to shit once we got back, but in the words of Chief Joseph, the great Nez Perce, Native American chief, I shall fight no more forever. His words kept ringing through my head back in 2007. The words of Chief Joseph, I will fight no more forever. I was done fighting. Fine, I'm willing to lose. I'm done fighting. I didn't like what it did inside of me. So if you want to engage someone in a fight, if that's what feels right, fucking do it. It's your life. You get to spend it however you want. I just personally got sick of being negative inside of my own soul, and I got sick of knowing that part of the cloud over my children's heads, the energy in their life, was half because of me. And I decided to let it go. But that's just me. All right, next question. Is it malicious to not protect someone from natural consequences knowing what they'll be? Is it malicious to not protect someone from natural consequences knowing presumably what those natural consequences should be? So you know someone is going to suffer from some natural consequence. Could be a tornado. and you choose to not pull them out of the tornado's way. It could be that if they say something to this person, you know how that other person is going to respond. Is it malicious to... Okay, I'm getting a feel for this. Are you getting a little feel for the question yet, Rob?
When is it not appropriate to protect someone? That would be my question.
When is it not malicious, more specifically, not just
malicious.
appropriate?
Yeah, right, malicious.
Is it okay to not protect someone from natural consequences? Well, the mere fact that you would ask that question, in all honesty, I believe in the goodness of the human spirit. I believe that we have the desire in us to do good. I very much believe that that is one of, if not the dominant human trait. When we all fuck up and we can all be selfish. But I believe our dominant trait is to do good and to be kind. I really and truly believe that. I mean that. Okay. And so if you are even considering not protecting someone, I think the natural instinct is if there were a little 6-year-old boy walking home from school and you're sort of 10 feet behind him and you see a car out of control up forward, still about 50 yards up, your natural instinct is to, oh shit, with that boy. And if I got to grab that boy, you start getting closer. If I need to pull that boy off of the sidewalk and throw him onto somebody's front lawn to avoid that car, I'm going to do it. Your natural protective instinct starts to kick in. If it were a little 6-year-old boy, you would not even consider not protecting that 6-year-old boy. There's just a natural instinct. So if you're even considering... Now, I'm granted, soul under construction, granted you're probably not talking about a 6-year-old boy. The mere fact that you're considering not protecting someone says that you have your own feelings of animus towards that person, don't you? Either you don't like that person or you're protecting yourself, knowing because somehow protecting them could hurt you. You have every right to protect yourself. Is it malicious to not protect someone? Well, the question is, do you feel malice towards the person? And if you feel malice towards the person, then that's probably why you're doing it. You realize that, right? All right. So is it malicious? It's malicious if that's your intent. But if you have, there are those times in life when we have to protect ourselves at the expense of others. There are those times. We try to do what we can to protect others, sometimes at the expense of ourselves. And that's noble as well. But sometimes you have every right to protect yourself in life. You have every right to do that. All right, next question. Got one over there, Rob?
Yeah, this is from AP over on YouTube, and it's stream of consciousness with no punctuation.
So is it a long one? Or?
No,
okay,
no, it's fairly short.
All right, here we go.
All right. After years of being with an extreme taker, when going back out, talking to folks online, what should one watch out for to catch that weak, be smarter to walk away? I'm new to dating. Any advice?
No, that's a great question. I get that all the time. Whether you've been with an extreme taker or you've just been in a relationship for a long time or you haven't dated a lot or whatever the circumstances, ultimately it's the question of red flags. Now, there are some people that believe the only thing that's really a red flag is a universal one like, he punched me in the face. Yeah, that's a red flag. You betcha. Or we went out for dinner and, they're mean to the waiter. For some people, that's the big red flag. Okay. Yeah. Cause that, whatever. No, you want to know what red flags really are? Red flags, the worst kind of red flags actually, and actually all red flags, they start small. This is the thing you have to remember, people. When you're getting back into dating or in a relationship at a new job or whatever it is, that red flags, that extreme taking, narcissism, it always starts small. It may not necessarily start in the beginning. It may start the day after the wedding, but it always starts small, which means everything is a potential red flag. Well, how the fuck do you know that? I mean, how do you know? Because small things become big things, and that's when they become really highly problematic. Or that's when a person is more and more expanding their power and taking advantage of you and hurting you and so on and so forth. So what does this mean? So how do you know then? Or what do you do? How do you know what is a red flag or what isn't? And my response to this is, and some of you have heard me say it before, and it's simply this. You have to be so tuned into yourself that you know what doesn't feel good to you. When something doesn't feel good to you, we have the beginning of a red flag. And it becomes a worse red flag. It becomes problematic if you don't address it. So it's not just being tuned into what feels, to use a kid word, yucky to me. doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right inside of myself, or, I wish you wouldn't done. It really hurt my feelings. Whatever it is that's going on inside of you, it's one, being able to identify how a person makes you feel moment to moment. And trust me, people, when I tell you the beginning of a relationship is the most important time in a relationship. That's when little things start, and little things become big things, people. So it's having the ability to identify how I feel. But if you're still so congested with all of your feelings from your past, from your childhood, from your last relationship, I'm still feeling anger at Paul because he was such a dick, blah, blah, blah. Or, man, I miss Susie so much. If you still have swollen feelings or something from anything in your past, it obscures your ability to feel your own feelings right now in the present. Now, we've all done that, right? You get yelled at by your boss, and you come home and, your spouse is trying to be nice and is saying something nice, but you interpret it a different way because you're still so pregnant with fucking anger at your boss, right? Okay, so here's the thing. The more you get all your feelings about your past out of you, the more you can be tuned into how this person feels right now. So the first thing is feeling how what they are doing and saying feels. And at the moment something doesn't feel good, the second piece is having the courage to say so, because if you don't say something when someone has hurt your feelings, if you don't say something, then guess what? You've just given them permission to do it again. And if you don't catch it the second time, you are fucked, because now we have the beginning of a pattern. Little things become big things, people. So to answer your question, you tune into you and you have the courage to stand up and say, this doesn't feel good. And you bring it up. And the truth is, if you're in a relationship with a decent person, they'll say, fuck, man, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You're right. I shouldn't have said that. That was rude of me. Or I'm sorry I didn't text. And then you'll witness a change in their behavior. Now, if you get the words without the change in behavior, obviously that's its own problem, right? Same thing. But the bottom line is you have to be tuned into yourself and you have to have the courage to speak or act on it. Much more to come right after this short break.
So I was telling a buddy of mine how he seems happier. He told me about the book that changed his life. So I bit. I went to the Badass Counseling website and downloaded There's a Hole in My Love Cup audiobook. I started listening to it on my commute home from work, and holy cow, it was a Louisville slugger to the face. I literally sat in my car in the driveway night after night, listening through to the end of a chapter or doing the journaling exercises. My wife started to see changes. I started to change a lot. My default response stopped always being anger. Now I manage a team of salespeople, and I changed as a leader. I was listening more, not always just reacting. When their numbers started going up seemingly out of nowhere, I knew what the reason was. There's a Hole in My Love Cup is now required listening for any person on my sales team or working for me, and I gladly buy it for them. You gotta listen to this book.
This show provides soul counseling intended to entertain and inform, and is not medical advice. Now, back to the badass.
Hello, it's good to have you back. We are in the middle of a lightning round of the Badass Counseling Show. Next question is from Eileen over on Facebook. I'm a mom, and I love my little boy more than anything. How do mothers, such as mine, treat a child, adult or child, like absolute shit? And now she's 83 and still a total evil bitch. And then she asks in follow-up, why can't they realize the harm in how they treat people? So basically, you're asking a question specific. You start by saying, how can someone treat a child or an adult that way? And then you get real specific and you say, how can my mother, who's 83, treat people this way, treat me this way, treat presumably your child this way? And then you say, why can't they realize the harm in how they treat people? Well, let me ask you this. Does your mom treat every single person the same way, or are there people that she treats better than you? I'm willing to bet there are people that she treats better than you. I'm willing to bet, whether it's the people at her church or her dear friends or her, her produce guy at the grocery store or whatever it is, I'm willing to bet that there are people that she treats better than she treats you. Would that be accurate or inaccurate? Because if it's accurate, what you're fundamentally saying then is she does realize how she treats other people, because she changes it from situation to situation. This is like what I was talking about earlier with regard to narcissists. If they are changing how they treat different people, that means they are conscious of how they are treating different people. That means your mother is conscious of how she's treating you. And you've no doubt told her that it doesn't feel good. You've now no doubt told her, but she doesn't care. And so she doesn't change. And you're saying, well, why then she change? Why do people do this? How can she do this? And you keep complaining because you're not getting your needs met. She keeps treating you this way and it hurts. And you have every right to feel hurt. And you have every right to complain. But in the end, she's not meeting your needs. She's not meeting your needs. And the reason that it hurts is because you're wanting something from your mom. Yeah, I want her to treat you differently. Right. And if she treated you differently, then what? Well, then maybe we'd have a relationship, or maybe then I'd feel validated, or I don't want anything from her. Really? Then why does it upset you so much how she treats you? Oh, because it feels like shit. So I want her to not treat me like shit. And yet she keeps doing it. You have, if your mom is 83, I'm willing to bet you're probably in your 40s-ish, maybe 50s, right? And so your mom keeps treating you this way. And so my question is, why would a person keep allowing someone to treat them this way? Isn't it reasonable to assume that you're allowing it because you still want something from her or you fear something from her? Right. So she still has power over you. And so I guess what I'm asking is, at what point in your life do you let go of wanting what it is that you feel you need from your mom? I'm guessing what you've been wanting. If she's been this critical your whole life, then what you've likely been wanting your whole life is her approval. And you have a 40 plus whatever year pattern of behavior from your mother indicating she has zero interest in giving you what you want. Yet you, despite that 40-year pattern, still believe that there's hope that pattern will change. That pattern is not going to change. It's not. There's no logic that exists that supports the idea that she's going to change. And so you are hoping against hope. And the reason you're hoping it is because the very person that created that lack of approval in you, your own lack of approval of yourself, is the person that you believe is the only person that can heal that lack of approval, that disapproval of yourself. And so you're wanting her to heal the wound that she caused or was instrumental in causing, even if she didn't do it all herself. It's like you're caught in a jail cell and you believe that the only person that has a key is mom, when in fact the key is inside your own pocket. And that means, yes, flushing out all your feelings and so on and so forth, but basically accepting it's never going to fucking happen. And you have to grieve that. I had that experience with the woman that I was with for some time. And she came to the realization at about 41 or 42, even though this woman had reached the very pinnacle of her career, hundreds of thousands of people in her field would have killed, probably millions, to be doing what she was doing. And even then, her mother just criticized her. I literally sat at dinner with her mother and listened to her mother criticize this extraordinarily successful woman. And she, that night, the woman I was with, went back to the hotel room after dropping off her mother, and she was simultaneously crying and laughing. I said, "What the hell's going on?" She said, "I'm crying because I realize I'm never going to get the approval and the acceptance from my mother that I've spent my whole life contorting myself trying to getting all this success, because maybe then she would give me approval." And it never came. And it's the saddest day of my life. I said, "Then what's the laughing?" She says, "Because it's also the most liberating day of my life." Why? Because I no longer have to spend the rest of my life contorting and succeeding, trying to win her approval. It is finally my life to live however I want. Because I've been living trying to get something from her, and she has no interest in giving it. And remember this one thing, people. As long as you want something from someone, they have the power to make you miserable. They have the power to withhold it. It's not until you no longer want it, no longer feel you need it in order to survive or to ever have a sense of worth. It's not until then that you're ever free. They still own you. Next question. Jenna, how do I get past my resentment? Just start flushing it out. Start journaling it out. Journal out questions like, write down the question on the page. What am I most angry about? Resentment is in the anger food group. What am I most angry about? Who am I most angry at? What is it that they have done to me that hurts so much, that makes me so angry? What is it that I fear them doing to me that is making me so angry? What is the one sentence I would most want to say to them? What would it feel like to say all these fucking questions, you guys? Honestly, swear to God, honestly, all of these great fucking monster journaling questions are in my book. There's a Hole in My Love Cup, and it steps you through healing process, but then Badass Wisdom, my 366-day meditational devotional, is literally every day is a new anecdote, a new story, and a new quote, and then a sequence of questions at the bottom. That shit will take you so fucking deep. I don't have many gifts in life. I know jack shit about computers, which is why Rob runs the fucking computers and the soundboard and the mixing and all the technical shit. Because if we switch chairs, Rob would actually be pretty good in my chair. I'd like blow shit up in his chair. I swear to God. No, really, I would. I'm a moron when it comes to computers. I know very little about cars. I couldn't hook up my own stereo. All right. There's so much in life I realize I don't know. I sucked at physics. I had to cheat to get a D. Chemistry as well, right? So many things I don't know, but there's one thing I do know. There's probably two things, but one is I know how to take people deep inside themselves. I may not have many gifts, but that I do, and I do it well. You want the fucking journaling questions. You want the questions that are going to help you flush out your shit. Get my 2 fucking books. I wrote those so you guys wouldn't have to pay my exorbitant counseling fees. I wrote it for men and women deployed overseas with the military who couldn't have counseling. All right? There's a hole in my love cup and badass wisdom at badasscounseling.com. There's so many fucking rich, lush questions in there that'll take you so fucking deep and really help you flush this shit out. All right. Next question. Rob, have you got one over there on YouTube?
I do, from Erica on YouTube, who says, it just feels bad to be mean to others out of anger, even if they deserve it. Also, what if you are wrong?
Okay, my question is, why would you want to be mean to someone out of anger? I mean, yeah, it can feel good in the moment to sort of flush out that venom, but why are you doing it? Because in the end, you can heal yourself without ever being mean to someone. All right? You can, you don't even, this is why I always tell people, you don't have to confront your parents in order for me to heal you. You don't have to confront anyone in order for me to heal you. All right? You just have to be willing to get out all your feelings. You don't have to get them out at the person, which is why you guys hear me talking about journaling and some of the other techniques that I teach in my book. There's a hole in my love cup. Because there are so many ways of getting it all out. It's not just the feelings themselves. It's the fears that go with the feelings and fears of future pain. But even most importantly, and this is what makes my work different from other therapists, counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, is I get down into core beliefs. I'm an absolute believer that what really drives us is the core beliefs that we've been taught to believe about ourselves that we can't even see yet. And the purpose of There's a Hole in My Love Cup is to help you identify those core beliefs that you can't see, that you've never even known that they're there, but they are infusing or outright driving every single fucking decision you make. And so, did I answer the question, Rob? I feel like I did.
It was actually a response to an earlier question she just points out, but still, that was an interesting point that you had and worthwhile, therefore.
Very gracious, very gracious. All right. Next question. Here we go. So this is a question. This is probably one of the most controversial things that I speak on. A cool ID on TikTok asked the question, we don't need to forgive others, but do we need to forgive ourselves? My views on forgiveness are very different from pretty much everybody else. And mind you, I'm a former clergyman. I'm a former Lutheran pastor, off and on for 15 years. Okay. And so, yeah, I got a bit of background in that whole field of forgiveness, which is a big deal in the Christian church, blah, blah, blah. And you've heard me say, and I write about in my book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup. And I will get to your question, cool. I know you know how I'm setting it up, and I want to cover this because a lot of people, don't know how I feel on forgiveness and others. In my book, I say the biggest mistake people make, particularly when addressing parental stuff and childhood stuff, is that they forgive too soon. Forgiving too soon. I am not opposed to forgiveness, but the truth is, to forgive too soon means that basically there's a breach. There's something that happened in a relationship between you and someone else, and so a breach has occurred. Pain has been caused, and so there's a gap between the two of you. My forgiving them, and I'm getting to your question, a cool idea about forgiving ourselves. I'm getting to your question. But if I forgive them, it has the power to do two things. It exonerates them. It forgives them. It lets them off the hook, okay? So they can heal then. If they feel bad about what they've done to cause the breach or their share of the breach, they can then heal because I have forgiven them, whether they've forgiven me or not, if I had culpability. The other thing it has the power to do is the forgiveness of them can restore the relationship. It can heal the relationship. So what forgiving does in forgiving the other person is it helps them heal and it can heal the relationship, but forgiving them does nothing to heal you. And this is the big fallacy when it comes to forgiveness, because very often what people are doing, and yes, I'm getting to the comment when people say, oh, you forgive for your own sake, not for them. No, if you're forgiving them and saying that just by forgiving them, that's going to heal me, I'm doing it for my own sake. No, you're not. Because what happens is we forgive before we get all of our own feelings out. The breach happened because something was done that caused you to not like them, not want to be with them, be angry at them. And unless you get all those feelings out, and again, you don't ever have to say it to them, but you have to get those feelings out. But so many people say, no, just forgive, and that's all that matters. Bullshit. You're just packing those fucking feelings down even deeper. You're driving it deeper, but driving it deeper ain't the same as it goes away. That's like saying, you know what? We're not going to dig a 50-foot pit to put this toxic waste into. We're going to dig a 100-foot deep pit. Then it'll be gone. Then the toxic waste won't bother us. Yeah, that's a good one. Oh, I'm sure it won't. No. It won't seep into the soil and the fucking groundwater and fucking... No. We'll just bury it deeper. Those feelings from that breach are toxic waste. And you're saying, hey, if I just say forgive, then kumbaya, and those feelings are gone. They're not. So that's what I mean when I say to forgive too soon. If you want to forgive later, forgive later. But the bottom line is you got to get your feelings out. But now, a cool ID on TikTok asked the question, okay, so we don't need to forgive others, Sven. Got it. But do we need to forgive ourselves? Let me ask you this. The real question is, did you actually do anything wrong? Or have you just been conditioned to blame yourself? Did you actually do something that you feel bad about? Or have you simply been conditioned your whole life to blame yourself in any situation? So then if you've been conditioned to blame yourself in any situation, the real solution is to go in and find out where the hell that voice came from that is causing you to constantly disparage yourself, tear yourself down. That's what you need to do to heal that. But if you've done something that you feel bad about, yeah, flush out all your pain. With your therapist or in your own journaling, or write letters you need to write that you don't send to flush it all out. And then give yourself grace. Give yourself grace. I've told the story before that my mom felt guilt well into her 70s. She felt guilt over mistakes she had made as a parent. And anybody who knew my mother knew that she was a just salt of the earth, World War II generation woman, fine mother. All of us kids adore both our mother and our father. They've been dead now for several years, died in their 90s. But she felt guilt because she saw the areas where she wished she would have done differently, and she felt guilt into her 70s and finally forgave herself. And it was in her 80s she once commented to me, you know, Sven, I realize I did my life a disservice. I should have forgiven myself sooner. But it was hard. But she realized I should have forgiven myself sooner, right? And let me tell you something. Many of you may not know this, but back in the 2000s, the Vatican released the personal journals of Mother Teresa. Did you know that Mother Teresa had a crisis of faith for some 20 years? Mother Teresa, you'd think the most saintly fucking person on earth. And she thought low of herself. Not only did she have a crisis of faith, she thought low of herself. So if even this person we think of as a saint can think little of herself, I mean, wouldn't most of us say, hey, Mom, Teresa, you can forgive yourself, okay? It's okay. We all think pretty well, but even the real good people among us, even they think ill of themselves, and we have to forgive ourselves. Otherwise, we're being bogged down by our own shit, right? And more often than not, if you can't forgive yourself, it's because you've got someone else's voice inside of you saying, you're unforgivable, you're not worthy of forgiveness, or you're no good. See, you're a fuck up. I told you you'd fail, those sorts of things. Yes, it can, yes. Forgiving yourself, yeah. And the way you do that is flush out all the things you feel bad about, all the guilt, all the feelings of feeling a bad boy, bad girl, whatever. Flush it all. And then at some point you have to give yourself some grace. You do. You have to say, I wish I hadn't, but it's okay. And life has to go on. Otherwise you live your life in misery, and that's not why we're here. All right, next question. Corbin asks the question, how do I stop hating myself? I feel like I don't deserve anything at all. I feel like all I do is wrong and I'm just not worth it. Okay, Corbin, you're basically making the point that you're confirming the point I was literally just making. Somebody's fucking voice is inside of you. But I'm going to take you through this, and I am going to simulate as if you're telling me the answers, because I'm not going to try to scroll here. Facebook is the hardest thing to scroll on when you're doing a live feed because it doesn't stay in place. But I'm going to ask you the question. You obviously hate yourself now. You said, how do I stop hating myself? I feel like I don't deserve anything at all. I feel like all I do is wrong and I'm just not worth it. So my question, if you were my client and you were in session with me, my question would be to you, what % do you hate yourself now? Corbin, what was the age? Okay, you hate yourself 80% now. Gotcha. What was the age when you hated yourself the most? Teenage years. Yep, teenage years. All right. What percent did you hate yourself in your teenage years? This is great. What percent did you hate yourself in your teenage years if you hate yourself 80% now? I'm going to speculate. If it's 80% now, then I'm going to guess in your teenage years it was higher than that. So let's say 90% or 100%. But now, folks, this is the killer question right now. What was the earliest age you remember hating yourself? Okay, he says, I 90% hated myself in teenage years. I never had someone there for me to help me. What was the earliest age, Corbin? If you were to really think and feel deeply and into your past, what is the earliest age you recall hating yourself? Earliest, absolute earliest. Even if it was only 10%. Kindergarten. I realized I didn't have my dad there for me. So in kindergarten, you're hating yourself. What does it say about, well, let me ask you all this. Is there anything a kindergartner could possibly do that would justify the kindergartner hating themselves? Is there any way a child could possibly do anything at age 5 that would, is there anything a child could possibly do to justify them hating themselves? If you knew that your 5-year-old child hated themselves, how would you feel as a parent? And if your answer is anything other than, I would feel like a motherfucking failure as a parent, then I say wrong answer. Yeah, you should feel like a failure as a parent. You fucked up if your child is hating on themselves. Somebody failed you as a parent. You were taught to feel, you were taught to hate yourself. You were taught that you're a failure, as you say right now. I'd feel like a failure. Right. And so you were taught, you were conditioned by, in one means or another, to hate yourself at a very early age. But then here's the real question. Do you hate your parents? As you think about this, do you hate the people who taught you to hate yourself? Corbin, waiting on you on this one. We've got a few people weighing in. Bo says probably not. Anthony says, I used to hate mine. William says, yes. Corbin says, honestly, yeah. I hate they did this to me, that they allowed me to feel this way. I got told I was too emotional. And see, that's the thing. So that's just it. You've got feelings inside of you of hatred, of strong resentment, of bitterness, of sadness towards your parents. And if you are not actively flushing that out, because there's nothing that justified you being taught to hate yourself. There is no logical reason for you being taught to hate yourself. Instead, what the child believes is mom and dad are good. Mom and dad love me. Therefore, if I'm not getting love, there must be something wrong with me. When in fact, mom and dad weren't good parents because they weren't delivering the love. So the fallacy that the child believes is that there's something wrong with me, when in fact, the problem was in your parents. There was never anything wrong with you to begin with. You were conditioned to hate yourself. And now you hate them, but I'm willing to bet that is a somewhat new phenomenon for you. You have to begin to flush out all those feelings. You have to begin to, and a lot of people don't want to do this, folks, and that is to ascribe blame where it really is. How do you explain a 5-year-old hating themselves if not the parents? People say, oh, well, society and their peer group. No, a 5-year-old doesn't have a fucking peer group. There is no societal influence on a 5-year-old. On a 10-year-old, please. Any peer or societal influence is minimal compared to the impact of the parent onto the child for those first 10, 15 years. And the fucking imprinting, it's basically done. By the time that kid is 6 or 8, the fucking imprinting is done. The parent could die, and that child is imprinted and will be answering to those parental voices for decades to come. Put it at the feet of the root cause. Put it at their feet. And you know what? So many people don't want to admit, don't want to look at what the fuck their parents did. They don't want to. And very often the parents aren't going to fucking own it. And very often, even if you did, and you don't ever have to confront the parent, but very often we're protecting our parents because, oh, honor your father and mother, even though they weren't honoring you. No, the contract was breached when they didn't do their fucking job in giving you love and allowing you to hate yourself at age 5. And guess what? For those of you who have never had a 5-year-old, if you have a 5-year-old, if you have an 8-year-old, if you have a 12-year-old and they hate themselves, you will know. You will know in their actions. You will know in how they carry their shoulders. You will see it in their face. Their energy will change when they start hating themselves or disliking themselves or feeling shame. Any in-tune parent sees that shit written all over their kids. And that ain't about gender. That ain't, oh, just moms. No, fuck no. I got plenty of dads who can read their kids like a book because they're tuned in and they give a shit. A child taught to hate themselves. A 5-year-old hating themselves. Shoot. You got a lot of feelings you got to flesh out, my brother. You have a lot of fucking anger and having the courage to lay the responsibility where it is. All right, next question. KJM8 says, but Sven, can some of it be brain chemistry? I'm going to be very, very honest with you. In other words, fundamentally, can a child be born hating themselves? Is what you're fundamentally asking. How much is nature? How much is nurture? I'll be very honest with you. My mother taught at the graduate level in the field of early childhood education. I have lectured at the graduate level and at the undergraduate level in the field of early childhood spiritual development. My mom was a published author in the field and writer, not author, but writer, journals and so forth, professional journals in the field of early childhood. This was her field of specialty. She did not believe, I do not believe, that a child is born hating on themselves. It's taught. Because even children who are born broken, or their heart outside their body or too small or born with learning disabilities and so on and so forth can be surrounded by a company of love and be taught to love themselves and to be seen as beautiful and so forth. It's how are you conditioning them? What are you conditioning them to believe about themselves? All right, next question. How can a child have so much hate for a parent that's done nothing but, quote unquote, the right thing for them? There is no parent that has done only the right thing for their parents or for their children. All right, let's get that out of the way. There is no flawless parent. There isn't. Doesn't exist. Zip zero. Okay. So you have done things. I have a very dear friend who had a daughter, loved her daughter very much, and her daughter was a chatty Cathy, so to speak. That's a phrase we have in American English, a chatty Cathy, chitter, chatter, chitter, chatter. She had a daughter who was chitter, chatter. And my friend had grown up in the city, okay? And she grew up in Chicago. And those of you who have lived in Chicago know you don't need a car in Chicago. And she had grown up there. And so she had never learned to drive until her 30s because she worked downtown right around, I don't know if she was on a Navy Pier or where the hell she worked. But she worked downtown, not Navy Pier, but whatever. And on the Miracle Mile, whatever it was. And so she had never learned to drive till her 30s. When she moved out, I don't know if she moved out to Naperville or where it was, Elgin, wherever it was. And she had to learn to drive because you're going to live out in the suburbs of Chicago. You got to learn to drive, especially if you're going in each day. You at least got to get over to the train station to catch the L, whatever. And when she learned to drive, she had a couple of young daughters, and she would drive her daughters to school. And particularly, the first one would catch the bus, but the younger one, she would drive when she was 5 or 6 years old. And because she was the mother, my friend, was a nervous Nelly when she was driving, there would be times, especially with all the school buses around and other cars going into the parking lots and all this stuff, she would get nervous because she had never driven before. And here she is in her 30s. Well, it's totally understandable. I'd be nervous if I were in that situation. And so she would say to her daughter routinely, okay, sweetheart, I need you to be quiet right now. Mommy's nervous. I'm driving. I need you to be quiet right now. I need you to be quiet right now. Day in and day out. No malice, no ill intent. And guess what? It was shortly after that, without being able to know why, that the mother noticed a change in the daughter. And it wasn't until the daughter was in her 20s at a Thanksgiving dinner that this story came up. And the daughter said, and the mother happened to ask something like, why did you ever stop talking? You were so chatty and everything. Because you told me not to, Mom. You didn't like my talking. The mom's like, what are you talking about? And then the daughter relayed the daily story, and the mother was aghast, turned white as a ghost. Because she realized, though she had no ill intent, she had sent an underlying message. And this, my people, this is what I talk about when I talk about those underlying messages, those core beliefs that you are taught about yourself that you don't even know exist. Because underlying messages are being conveyed. Now, that daughter was able to articulate where it came from, but the parent was utterly oblivious. So when you ask the question, how can a child have so much hate for a parent that's done nothing but the right thing? And I already dispelled the myth that there's any parent who does nothing but the right thing, who always does the right thing. That doesn't exist. Rob and I both know we've made plenty of mistakes in our own parenting, right? Okay. And he's actually a really great parent. So you've made mistakes, but the bottom line is you have sent messages that have embedded into the wet cement of that child's soul when they were young, and that wet cement hardened into hard cement. And the task is, regardless of whatever you think of your parenting, the bottom line is, if I'm really being honest with you, you asked the question, so I'm going to be honest. I'm going to trust that you can take it. You conveyed messages to that child. And what's getting in the way potentially is your own ego. If I'm being really honest, that very often a parent doesn't want to admit that they fucked up. And you know what I discovered with my own kids? Why wouldn't I admit when I fucked up? You know, if let's just randomly say one of my kids, when I was, let's say in my 40s, had come to me and said, Pop, you fucked up on this or that, or this really hurt my feelings, or I felt negated by you, or you were never around, or whatever it might have been. If they had come to me and said that, which they actually did. First of all, if a child is having that memory in their 20s, in all likelihood, it happened. It's real. I know by my mid to late 40s, I had forgotten a shit ton of stuff from 20 years earlier. I'm in my 50s now. I guarantee my adult kids' memories are infinitely better than mine. But my instinct is to self-protect and say, no, that didn't happen. I don't remember that. And I may not, in fact, remember it, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. We remember traumatic events. Do you remember that motorcycle accident you were in high school? Yeah, I'll bet you remember it in vivid detail, don't you? Oh, yeah. So things that hurt, we remember, right. But on top of that, the more important thing is I realized that what does it hurt me to admit that I hurt them? What does it hurt me? So it's a blow to my ego, big fucking deal. But they stand to gain everything. That this pain is that I've caused them is like a rock in this burlap sack on their back, weighing them down. I have the opportunity to take that rock from them that I caused, that I put in there. I have the opportunity to take it and relieve them of that weight so that they can fly at full fucking wingspan. My weight that I caused, the pain that I caused, is weighing them down. Why wouldn't I? What do I stand to lose? My God, the child benefits so much and it costs me so little except my own fucking ego. Rob's going to kill me for yelling into the microphone like that.
I have you on a limiter.
What's it going to cost me? Parents, get past your egos. Get past. See, the thing is we invest so much of ourselves into something. If I invest so much of myself into working out, let's say, the people who overexercise or whatever, extreme exercises, that means they're tying, the more you pump more of yourself into something, you are tying up your identity in whatever you're pumping your energy into. So the more ballet classes, the more butts you wipe, the more school lunches you pack, the more things you do for your child, you are investing more and more of yourself in it, which means you have more and more of your own identity wrapped up into this person. You see that? And therefore, if they say that you screwed up or I don't like how you parented me, that's a blow not just to my parenting or whatever. It's a blow to my own sense of identity. Well, I thought I was a perfect parent and you're not. So here's the deal. Here's the bottom line. That's all the questions I'm taking right now. But we're probably going to do another live right after this because we said we're going to do 2 tonight. We're going to decide in a minute. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in and all of your most excellent questions. I hope we were able to clear a few things up. Rob, you sort of get the final word. Speak.
Well, I spoke like chatty Cathy, right? I was a talker when I was young. My parents were okay with it. But I was kind of incessant in talking. I had a lot to say. And I think my parents thought I'd been vaccinated with a phonograph needle. I'm not sure.
And what became of the chattiness?
I went into radio.
You're a quick wit, you young fella.
I'm just full of wit.
Yes, you are. You are so full of wit. All right, people, this has been lovely. Casey is laughing over in the booth. She enjoys Rob very, very much. It's been great having you tuning in to the Badass Counseling Show. Whether you are tuning in from New Zealand or New South Wales or New Brunswick or Newcastle or White Castle, it's great to have you here. Have a kick-ass day.
The Badass Counseling Show is strictly copyrighted. No copies may be made without the express written consent of the Badass Counseling Show, LLC. The Badass Counseling Show is produced by Karen Camparelli and Robert H. Friedman. Executive producer Sven Erlandson. Original music by two-time Emmy Award-winning composer Trevor Morris. Have a kick-ass day.